Hi, good afternoon. It is afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sam Lee. I'm the Senior Innovation Officer at Transport for Greater Manchester. This is Subu. I'm Head of Product Management and TRL. We go from high-tech of connected vehicles to low-tech, which is walking as a whole. So today's presentation just talk about the demonstration we're doing in Greater Manchester, some of the learnings that we've had so far in terms of initial deployment, and where we want to go next as a whole. So just a quick overview. As part of the funding from Department of Transport of the Traffic Signal Maintenance Fund, we looked at how can some of this traffic technology be used to encourage people to walk more. I think sometimes we focus so much on just journey times and kind of improvement in terms of congestion. We forget actually, we need to demonstrate real impacts for behavior change to get people out of the car to achieve our net zeros objectives and regional objectives as a whole. So through this fund, we'll look to upgrade 20 different junctions for pedestrian crossings and detections. And I'll go into a bit more detail on what that actually means. But all of this ties to a wider regional agenda. As you know, Greater Manchester's going through hulks regional activities ranging from bus reforms to active travel investments. So all of this ties back into that wider customer journey. It's not just that particular mode, is when they get out the door to the moment that they get to the destination, to the leisure activities, to that how do they need to travel as a family as a whole, touching on the points around personas and lifestyles, really understanding how people need to move and want to move. I don't think I need to explain why we want to look at active travel. I think everybody in the room kind of understands the opportunity active travel would provide. But I think the key thing I would just want to get across is, how do we find that balance between prioritizing pedestrians as well as making sure that we don't cause congestion for vehicles? How do we demonstrate that we can apply kind of transport technologies and translating policy objectives into traffic signal timings as a whole? So these are some of the kind of main barriers, I guess, for walking in Greater Manchester. Speed, volume, condition of pavement. This one's always comes up, I guess, comes back to the pothole points that colleagues have mentioned already. It's around kind of understanding a lot of that, and kind of signals as a way for us to improve that as a whole. So I'm just skipping through these a little bit because I'm just mindful of time. But for our active travel ambition, this is kind of from the Manchester Active Travel Strategy, is making those regional centres more accessible. I think sometimes when we look at ped crossings and various things, we put them in, but not necessarily use the various tools we have fully available to enhance that offering. Working with kind of TRL, we're trying to explore that a bit more in this project. And the barrier of movement is removing and mitigate, so it's not really rocket science. So what we're doing within the project is in twofold. One is around deployment of technology and better understand how we can influence at that very local level. But we'll also look at wider data sets that can help us understand pedestrian movements, active travel movements, and kind of touch on, Irene's presentation from C-Sense from other sensors as well in the ecosystem. How do we bring all that to give us, I guess, digital twin is the buzzword from yesterday, real time, understanding how the system works as a whole, and have interventions that we can put in place. So the project on the ground level is focusing on volumetric data as a whole. So we have the detectors that is installed now on site to pick up how busy the pedestrian waiting area is as a whole, and classifying in different ways. And I'm sure colleagues will have a question of, well, what does low mean? What does medium means? This is what we want to work out in the project as a whole. What are the different thresholds that we want to kind of set for timings? And the idea is that to take that demand and change the length of the period of green for people to cross as a whole without impacting on the congestion on the roads. And it is starting to understand those levers and what we can actually do. Do we at certain times give green pedestrian more times if it's really busy? How do we potentially link this to junction by junction basis in the future? But just putting it all in context, as I think sometimes we get lost at, is just technology for technology side of things. We're trying to get that narrative across so we can get it across to our members and kind of political stakeholders. This is a junction with this number of junctions that we're deploying in Disbury Village. You can see very clearly that's a lot of green space to the east, schools, public transport. And we're putting these devices and upgrading these junctions to bridge the gap between that main road and all the access to services across the other side, so that people don't feel like, oh, I'm just going to drive around the shop. Actually, they can walk across, and there's a safer experience as a whole. Some of you may know Manchester. This is the northeast of Manchester city centre. That road is the major Great Anco Street, which is the main ring road around the city. Again, there's a disconnect between the residential side with Anco's development, as well as the regional centre around employment, retail, and various others, kind of entertainment. How do we break that gap that roads create and create a more seamless walking experience? I think more anecdotally from yesterday, Etihad Stadium is just up the road from the match. We have a lot of people just walking across that road, not going at the crossings because it's easier. How does technology like this help us to encourage safe crossing behaviours during match days and other propositions as a whole? I'm now going to kind of hand over to Subu just to talk about how the technology and how it all integrates together and the role open data has to play.
Thank you, Sam. So, what you are seeing is what Sam just explained. We have the business as usual, where you have pedestrian detectors on ground going into UTC and optimization happening through the strategy manager. That's business as usual. And what I'm going to talk about is how open data is helping or going beyond what we are getting from traditional or above ground detection from ground. So open data is defined by DFT as findable, accessible, shareable, reusable, and machine readable. So these are 5 qualities, and that's what we are restricting to. Sometimes it is also helpful if that happens to be free, and most of the times it is free for the end user. So here we are using, there are two key points. We are consuming open data from Waze, Strava, bots, bus open data, and we are also publishing data openly for others to use from UTC through our developer portal. So that leads to new products and innovation like what George is doing in his connected vehicles project. So some of the data that we are using, Waze for cities, it is free for cities, where we are using real-time traffic data, incident reports, historical traffic data that goes into the strategy manager in UTC, along with the active data from the loops and the above ground detection that is used to prioritize traffic and take decision. The other interesting data set that we are working with is Strava data. So this is more focused towards active travel, where we get route data, which it's not point data about whether the pedestrian is there at point or not, but which routes they are taking, what is popular routes, what time. We get the complete sort of pattern used by pedestrians and cyclists, and that is again used inside UTC to promote or prioritize active travel. The third data set is, of course, bots, which we are regularly using. And there are more data set points available from bots, but we are using timetable API and bus location API, again to prioritize or influence the signal timings on ground. So in summary, we apart from the traditional data sets, open data really helps, and most of the time the open data is free, as we have said, and the open data that we publish is also free for end users. So please, and it leads to more innovative solutions like the one George and others are developing. And it is absolutely, when using single point detectors just to detect pedestrian movement and using that alone to take decisions is not, it will help more to use wider, richer data sets to take more prioritization and traffic management decisions using wider data sets. So that is right. Any questions? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think just to add to Subu's point, when we talked about the bus data piece, you can imagine a scenario where we're using the AVL data to locate when the bus stops, and then we see a surge demand at that pedestrian crossing. how do we start linking those insights together at the strategic level while at the real-time level? We don't necessarily know the answer of what the best way to optimize or who to optimize for at the moment, but that's what we want to try and find out through this project. Unfortunately, I didn't include the slides on how we're going to measure kind of the monitoring evaluation of it, but a lot of it will be about pedestrian stationization, how long they're waiting for, against vehicle delays as a whole, as the key kind of metrics to measure success. But as Subu said, we're trying to make sure this data is open so colleagues can explore and see what else they can do with it. Could it be linked to connected vehicles as well as kind of wider vulnerable road users? But yeah, as the project progresses, we'll feed back to the wider TTF group and see how we get on. So thank you.